In the summer of 2025, OpenAI quietly registered 14 new subsidiaries under holding structures that obscured their purpose. Legal filings in Delaware showed research divisions with names that meant nothing to the public. But one phrase kept appearing in internal documents that leaked to journalists at the information: indefinite horizon planning. That phrase is not a product feature. It is a description of a mind that thinks forward without a time limit. GPT-4 cannot do that. GPT-4 answers questions. What OpenAI is building now does something categorically different. It pursues goals. Here is why that distinction should stop you cold. Every AI system you have used so far, including the current ChatGPT running on GPT 5.6 Sol that OpenAI just announced this week, operates in sessions. You open it, you ask, it answers, the session ends. The model does not remember you tomorrow. It does not wake up at 3 a.m. and keep working on your problem. It does not decide, on its own, that it needs more information before it can answer well. These are not software limitations waiting to be patched. They are architectural choices that have defined every large language model ever deployed. OpenAI is now building a system where those constraints are gone entirely. The economic consequence of that shift is not abstract. McKinsey estimated in 2024 that AI automation would affect 30% of work tasks by 2030. That estimate assumed the current session-based architecture. A persistent, goal-directed AI agent changes the math by an order of magnitude. We are talking about a system that could conduct a 6-month legal discovery process overnight. One that could run a pharmaceutical research pipeline without a human researcher initiating each step. The difference between a tool and an autonomous agent is the difference between a hammer and a contractor. One waits on the shelf. The other shows up and builds the house. To understand what OpenAI is building, you need to understand what came before it and why it fell short. GPT-2 in 2019 could generate convincing paragraphs. GPT-3 in 2020 could write code and answer questions well enough to surprise researchers. GPT-4 in 2023 passed the bar exam at the 90th percentile and outperformed most humans on medical licensing tests. Each jump felt exponential. But every single one of those systems shared a fundamental architecture: the transformer. A transformer reads tokens, predicts the next token, and does this billions of times. It is extraordinarily good at pattern recognition across language. Think of it like a musician who has heard every song ever recorded and can improvise brilliantly in any style. But that musician cannot compose a symphony over 6 months, refine it, abandon a movement that is not working, and return to it with new perspective. Transformers are reactive. What comes next is not. OpenAI's classified project, referred to internally by sources cited in both The Information and Bloomberg as a system codenamed Orion-class architecture, is not a larger transformer. The revelation is this: it is a hybrid system that fuses a language model with a reinforcement learning agent running on top of a persistent world model. That means the system builds an internal representation of reality, updates it continuously, and uses it to plan sequences of actions across days, weeks, or months. GPT-4 processes 128,000 tokens at once, which is impressive. This architecture does not just process a context window. It maintains a living memory structure, like a researcher who keeps a lab notebook that never gets thrown away. In closed benchmark tests described by 2 engineers in a restricted forum captured by journalist Devin Kaldui, the system solved research tasks that required holding 40 distinct variables in memory simultaneously across a simulated 72-hour period. GPT-4 on the same tasks failed within the first 20 steps. The gap is not incremental. The mechanism behind this involves 3 interlocking components working in a loop. The language model handles communication, reasoning, and language understanding, the things transformers already do well. Beneath that sits a world model, which is a compressed probabilistic map of how actions cause outcomes. Think of this as the difference between a GPS that tells you your current location versus a navigation system that models traffic patterns, fuel consumption, and road closures simultaneously to route you across 3 days of driving. The world model lets the system simulate futures before committing to actions. The third component is a reinforcement learning policy engine that scores potential action sequences and selects the path most likely to achieve the stated goal. What makes this counterintuitive is that the language model is not in charge. The RL policy engine is. The language model is the translator between the machine's internal planning process and the human world. Most people assume the chatbot is the brain. In this architecture, the chatbot is the mouth. The risks here are not theoretical. When an AI system can pursue goals autonomously across extended time horizons, the question of alignment, meaning whether the system pursues goals you actually want rather than a proxy version of them, becomes critical in ways it never was before. A session-based model that gives a bad answer is annoying. An autonomous agent that pursues a misspecified goal for 72 hours can cause real damage before anyone notices. OpenAI's own safety team published a research paper in early 2025 acknowledging that agentic systems introduce what they called irreversibility risk, meaning actions taken in the world that cannot be undone. There is also a concentration of power problem. If one company controls an agent that can conduct independent research, legal analysis, financial modeling, and strategic planning simultaneously, the competitive moat that creates is essentially unbridgeable for anyone without equivalent infrastructure. A small firm competing against a business deploying this technology is not competing at a disadvantage. It is competing against a different category of entity entirely. Now consider what this means for you specifically. If you work in law, accounting, consulting, research, software architecture, financial analysis, or any field where the core product is extended reasoning over complex information, your job function is not being automated in the shallow sense. It is being reproduced at scale, not in 2040. The internal timelines reported by Bloomberg suggest a limited enterprise deployment by late 2027, with broader availability